So we could probably spend the entire program talking about Alice and the Weinberg ladies, which, for the record, if you don't know this, they are not related and the names are not spelled the same. So as we've all been taught that over the years. There are very, very many similarities. Both of them grew up in Central Florida. Ben was actually born here and Alice went here in elementary school. Both are professional women with very successful careers that were absolutely dedicated to this community and to other communities as well over the years, into making the neighborhoods that they live in and the communities that they thrived in better. Alice is a key leader in the growth of the Central Florida Zoo, worked for the Orange County School Board, so I have to tell you I did not know that. And was an integral part, and this is where applause comes in, at the Seminole County property of Razor's office. I tell you, would not be what they are today without Alice. I'd be clerking the community of Western. Sabbath's been an advertising professional for more than 5 years. She was a critical and integral part to the Orlando Singapore International Airport and its growth over the years. She was personally responsible for keeping Larry Dale in line. We thank him. She worked for cities and school boards in Central Florida, helped to manage the public relations with restaurant chains, beer wholesalers, and that sounds like a very fun part of your life, my friend, and held here corporations, one of which is here today. So we are delighted to have you here. The impact that they've had on the community is significant, with organizations like the Florida Symphony Ring, Wage Edge Performing Arts Center, Leadership Seminole, Opera Women's Club, Leukemia Society, Sertoma Base Camp, Seminole County Arts Council, and because they are sponsors, I will say the South Seminole Women Advisory Group, which you probably don't even know that you had a fun time when you did. You were all coming to all of you listen home, you got here wherever you are now, right? I created it. I worked for them for a while. Right, she did. She worked for them for a while. So with that, I'm going to have a seat. I apologize. I would have worn slacks, but none of them that I owned. It ended up, so it is what it is. And so I'm only mad because Alice is going to yell at me later for not having worn the slacks, and I might as well just come in and say, it is what it is. So let me start by just asking, what caused you to get involved in the community to the degree that you both did?
Well, I think mine started very early in my life because I had a mother who was very involved. She was a single parent through no fault of her own. My father was, when I was an infant, was missing in action in Korea. So she was a single mom until I was about 11 years old, and that's when I moved to Orlando. And, of course, she worked numerous jobs, and at the same time was the PTA president, was the scout leader, was the Sunday school teacher, everything else. And that was kind of a catalyst for me to get involved in the community.
So the impact of mom. How about you, Bev?
Well, my family, too, were very involved. My mother and dad built the gift fruit shipping business that they had at Silver Star 441 in the Orange Grove that I grew up in, the 15 acres on Lake Heritage, by being community involved, getting involved in clubs and organizations. And also, my dad kind of lived down at the Chamber of Commerce. And you understand this was very, very early in the 1950s that they were doing this. So he would take the ladies at the Chamber of Commerce oranges a couple times a week. And then anybody that stopped there said, "Where do you get your oranges?" They sent them out to Denison Grove. So that was a building technique I learned when I was a little kid. But the reason why I got involved was that in 1985, I decided to leave the Madman advertising agency in Orlando that I worked for and start my own business. And the Madman were in Orlando, and I knew there was no chance for them in hell of making any house in the Orlando area because they owned it, the Fly Hammond and Bars and the other agencies. But Seminole County was the Wild West. It was just in the 80s, burgeoning with businesses and with growth around I-4. And I thought, this is where I can actually give some accounts. I can grow, I can start small and grow with that. So that's why I became involved with Chamber of Commerce. It was the first thing I did after I started with my company, with the $16,000 I inherited from my aunt. So that was, well, it didn't cost me that. It cost me $350.
I was going to go into right ahead and say for those new members in the room, it is much lower than that. Right, for Becca, it's way less.
So that's how I got involved. And I got more involved and more involved.
You've both been involved in a lot of nonprofits. Which one is the nearest and dearest to your heart? Alice, I'll start with you.
Well, I'd be really remiss if I didn't say my latest one that I have been involved at, although I've been involved in it for 40 years, is Base Camp Children's Cancer Foundation. And of course, several of my favorite things here. How are you? They're here, they are. But actually, I started in that kind of as a secondary because it's where I first met Terry Jones, is at Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And that was, I don't even know, the early 80s that I met her there. And the reason that we were involved in the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, which my husband was, and he was a national trustee and all sorts of other things, and I was the tag-along helping behind the scenes. But Art Brindle asked us to join that. And your question earlier, why was I involved in the community? It's because someone asked me initially, and I had that background at home. So it always helped to have that aspect of it. But of course, there's other organizations I love. I love Leadership Seminole. I think anyone who does not join Leadership Seminole is crazy. Because when I just went through my 2003 class, I really thought I knew everybody in Seminole County. I thought, what am I going to get out of it? I got so much out of it, made so many friends. You'd walk into a room like this, you knew 3/4 of those people before you even, I mean, you knew them from Leadership Seminole. So that was a wonderful organization to belong to.
I do believe I went through Leadership Seminole after having attended their events for many, many years because my husband was an alumni and no one realized that I had skated through and was just attending as a spouse until Alice and Dee Dee and I were out to dinner one evening and they figured it out and I was enrolled in a class the next day. It was amazing. It's just amazing. And you're right. It was the right thing to do. I thought I was really being accomplished by sneaking around it. Bev, how about you?
Well, when I thought about this question, I've been in so many nonprofit situations and boards, but I think the one that I relished the most was that I was with a group of folks that I had met at the chamber, and we created this school. It was called the XL Alternative School. It was the first school of its kind in the United States of America. It came out of workforce development, which was a program back in one of the many, many previous administrations. And so the XL School was a not-for-profit. It was located on Lake Erie Boulevard in one of those buildings down toward the end. And it was for the kids that were expelled from school. And the program was a mentoring curriculum. They had school, it was high school, but they dressed like business people. And they meant boys had to wear suits, shirts, white shirts and ties. The girls had to wear dresses and like pantyhose and shoes. And they had to do business functions for half the day and school functions for the other half the day. And they got high school credit for it, and they ended up graduating. And the school system got paid the money they didn't lose the money for the students. We created it, we ran it for 5 years, and then we were bought by a national organization that was owned by the Bush family, Star, in Texas. And we were not-for-profit, and it was for-profit. And they paid us $9 million for this entity that they bought because we had the curriculum, we had everything, our little old board. And I was the treasurer at the time. We got to have a party and distribute about $9 million across the county to not-for-profit organizations because the law is a not-for-profit can't take that money and run with it or divide it up amongst their board members, which I like the idea. I'll never forget because we see they were affiliated with all the school systems, Seminole and Orange and all these school systems, and they had the bad kids there. They weren't bad, the disciplined kids. That was the most impactful of anything. The other two that I would just really remember because they were so sacrificial in time, effort, and stress was saving the theater in downtown Sanford, which at that time was not called the Wayne Gedge Performing Arts Center. We saved it by going to Wayne Gedge, and he gave us enough money to save it. The board saved it. I just happened to be made the chair when the previous chair walked out because she wanted to buy it and sell it herself, and the board didn't want her to do that. And then the other one was the Chamber of Commerce. When I first joined, the 1985 to 1990 Chamber of Commerce, because it almost got bought by the Orlando Chamber. We had a little situation with the then executive that kept two sets of books. And we didn't know it. We were board members. And ladies and gentlemen, that's when I learned it's really, really urgent that you take care before you take a board position. Because the federal government locked all of the board members' personal accounts. And that was not fun, nor was it fun explaining it to my husband. But that's all the way it put it. Nothing to do with the evidence, you know. But in the end, it all worked out well.
Their board.
We're the board, you know, that you go to a solvent organization, you don't just sign up for everything. But in the end, we had a Save the Farm barbecue across from City Hall in Castleberry, and we raised $80,000 and paid off the debt. We sold the building that they had built, they couldn't afford to stay in. They hired a new executive. We did not let Jacob Stewart of the Orlando Chamber buy us for $5,000, and look where you are today.
There might be another panel at some point on the ups and downs of the chambers. It all ends with, look where you are today. Because people stepped in and said, yeah, no, we're going to keep doing this. So I know you chaired the Hobnob for many, many years, Alice, and quite honestly, I give huge kudos to Rebecca for being willing to step in and do the Hobnob after Alice, because it's such a hard act to follow. I know Tricia was a very big part of making that thing hum, and it's continued to do that today. I know, Bev, you were part of the team that took people to Tallahassee. Give us a story that's really interesting. Not that Bev isn't already on that path, let me just say. I mean, I'm on the details, but so I'm a little hesitant asking that question. So I am going to start with you, Alice, and then I'm going to time censor you, Bev.
Well, I took a number of people to Tallahassee on Tallahassee trips with Debbie Cotton and some other folks, and Debbie Andria, who was also a huge part of our Hobnobs over the years, because I'll never forget the day she brought Rebecca in and Missy and a few others that we wouldn't have survived. I don't know how many Hobnobs I shared for you to say. I also was involved with Orlando Regional Realtor Association because I served on the board there and was the affiliate chair through my work with the property appraiser's office. And so we took a lot of realtors to Tallahassee, and at the same time we did candidate screening and what have you. So there's a lot of stories about Tallahassee that I won't bring up. But all I can say is get involved in politics, know both sides of the story. But as far as Hobnob stories, we were always very strict about how we handled the committees for that, because there was always a misconception that if you're in one political party or another, you're going to sway either way. And we just ran them very strictly, and they could have gone south easily, but we always made sure that we gave everybody proper recognition regardless of what party they were from. Right, Alan? Didn't we?
Yes.
Only on occasion.
I always felt like they were on the verge of going south every minute during the Hobnob, but never did, because there were people that had a really tight rein on it. As you try to manage a bunch of people that want to be elected and those that are elected, and I speak from...
Well, it was like harding cats.
It's awful.
And what it's awful. We had certain criteria that was in place about if a candidate had purchased a table, that they were given certain benefits. And unfortunately, you had the candidate who would show up, who would want to utilize the function and the money the chamber had put into presenting it to. So we had strict rules and they didn't like them.
So they come in with shirts turned inside out and then turn the shirt right side out after they're in, thinking that these ladies wouldn't throw them out. Wrong. All sorts of stuff.
Yeah, well, I had a throwdown with a candidate once that I believe was at this hotel that had strict rules about bringing in food, and their colors were green, and they brought in cupcakes, green cupcakes, and were trying to serve them to everybody, and I had a real throwdown after I ate it.
The health department doesn't like external food at the hotel, so that is kind of a big deal. Tell me about one key initiative that you think changed the trajectory for Seminole County.
Okay, this is my perception, because in late in life, someone that I got to know when this actually happened has changed my perception of what happened. But there's a gentleman named Fred Street, which some of you know and some of you don't. He's elderly. And he was the county commission chairman. He's elderly.
You still hold around those.
For 8 years at the end of the 80s. Now, I understand Seminole was blowing up in the 80s, and I can tell you realistically, the county commission for the first half of the 80s did not plan ahead for it. And if you'll notice, when you drive around my neighborhood down out by Beverly, there's all kinds of weird houses. They had no code enforcement. They let them build. They actually had a road with a stream running by. So anyway, in 1988, I was on the Economic Development Committee of the old chamber, and Amante McEnroe from Barnett Bay wanted to do a program you could get federal money to. It was called the SHIP, S-H-I-P program, to allow first-time home buyers to have a $3,000 down payment, and it had to be processed through the county. And so he thought I was when, this advertising gal. He carried me down to the county commission. First time I'd ever been there. First time I'd ever been a county commissioner in my 3 years of life. And we went, and Fred Streetman was the chair. It was his first term. We sat in his big chair in his big office, and he said, "We don't want affordable housing in Seminole County. We don't want any little houses with young people in them. We want big houses and expensive, where we get big taxes, and then we build beautiful shopping areas to go into big expensive people that live in the big expensive houses. We're not going to do this program." And so we left. I got in the car and I thought, that is the nastiest man I have ever seen in a lot. But today, he has been in my circle club with me here in Seminole County for at least 15 years. He's very elderly now, and his eyesight is, he's still a tremendous.
Oh, I'm going to tell stories on you later.
I don't need to understand it. He tells it all differently now. Yeah. But look, as she says, look where we are today. They created a plan. That commission created a plan.
They did, and that plan may have been created because that may have been as eye-opening to him as it was to you. So maybe we owe you a debt of gratitude. Although I am going to ask Fred Streetman for his birth certificate along with yours, just for he was my witness out there, really. So let's talk about women in politics, one of my favorite topics. I often feel like we take a half a step forward and 10 steps backwards. And we continually do that. I'll just say we're 50% of the population, and we're not 50% represented in any board that I know of, elected or C-suite, and we still have a lot of work to do, which is why we do events like this. Talk to me about Paula Hawkins and Sandra Glenn and the trails that they blazed. And I think, Alice, you just got nominated to lead on this question. Oh, Bev gave you the nomination there. But talk about their tremendous impact. Paula Hawkins, for those of you that don't know, ran as she was just a Maitland housewife. That was her campaign. That was her campaign. Just a Maitland housewife, and I think I can do this better than the gentlemen that are doing it, and became one of our first female senators.
Well, she was a really unique woman. I didn't work on her campaign. I knew her and I knew her daughter very well. But at the same time, she was a real trailblazer because she had a lot of people who put her down because she was a housewife, because she was this, because she was that. And she had a lot of chutzpah. And I know John Michael.
Thank you for that word.
For many years and learned a lot from her. Right. And, but when you talk about Sandra Glenn, I was closer to Sandra. Sandra would be one of my mentors because I've worked a lot in politics. And because I was from Orange County also, I kind of bridged the gap there. And I knew a lot of the leaders in Seminole County who were women. Jeannie Austin was our state committee woman and later the party chairman. And she was a real go-getter and a real hard worker in the party. She had a lot of chutzpah too, but I mean, if she didn't like something, she really let you know it. She didn't do it with a smile sometimes. She just let you know you were doing the wrong thing. But no man would fight her for her the things that she was promoting. But Sandra in Seminole County, I was very close to her even back when she was a commissioner in Altamont Springs and then ran for county commission. And I always respected her because, and I think it's kind of an example of the women that you really like. And I'm thinking of all the ones that were my mentors, and all of them had personalities very similar. I was thinking about this the other day. They had a sense of humor. Most of them were family people. They did a lot behind the scenes that you didn't even know with their kids, getting involved in sports and other things. Baseball was the thing that Sandra was involved in, like Sarah Reese is involved in programs over the years in baseball, Altamont. And Sandra was extremely smart, and I watched her many times in situations with men before she became a county commissioner. And you knew she was going to get her way about things, but she would do it with a sense of humor. And if she liked you, she would just really go. Matter of fact, the job I had at the zoo as a development director, there were a number of us who were up for it. And she literally called the executive director there and told him he would hire me. And then when I found out that, I went, oh my God, I was so embarrassed. He hired me and he let me know that she had told him that. But she certainly, and I know she was a mentor to Brenda Carey for many years. They were very close. Brenda's like a daughter to her. And I think Brenda's daughter's here, and I think she was like a daughter to her. But, or no, she is. I thought she was, but she isn't. I thought she was coming. And then there were a number of others. We had a number of county commissioners, Jennifer Kelly and Pat Warren, and Barbara Christensen. So we did have women who were there. And actually, the commissioners, I have a different side of my feelings about Fred because I've known him a lot longer than Beth has. Because I cannot imagine that he said those things. My husband was his campaign manager, and that was not his philosophy. Anyway.
So the women today. So I started meeting at the Seminole County Commission a very long time ago, so 1987. For the record, I'm not as old as Fred Street. But there were more women on the Seminole County Commission back then, and I can remember those ladies. I mean, I feel like there are times when I'm a take no prisoners gal. They wouldn't take no prisoners. I mean, if you were going to be elected in the 80s as a female, it was a whole different game.
Sure, absolutely right.
And today, I would tell you that I don't think that works anymore. The world has changed to a very large degree for the better, but they blazed a trail for everybody in this room and for the people that are out there running businesses. I look at the Orlando Law Group. I am truly inspired by what you guys have done. But people in this community that sat in those seats years ago blazed that trail. Even though I would literally shake in my shoes when I went in front of them. Talk about little stupid insurance.
And even if you were a woman going before them, because I had to go before them on various things.
It was worse. They held you to a tough standard. God forbid you showed up with a skirt too short or a hole in your pantyhose or an open-toed shoe. That was not a pretty outcome. Not a pretty outcome. Not that I ever did any of that.
Just a point, because I used to help these ladies run for office. I had a lawyer say to me, I can't help her because she wears funny shoes.
Yeah, true story. Yep. I've had people kicked out of insurance agencies because of the color of their shoes. So give us a little bit of inspiration here in the middle of this. We have over 200 women in the room that are either in leadership positions or aspiring to be in leadership positions. And I would tell you that I don't think that's a reality. I think everybody is in a leadership position, no matter where you are in life. The greatest opportunity to be a leader is to know when to follow. And we need to take that through our entire careers. Give us just a word of wisdom to these ladies. And, Ben, if you want to take this with you, I'll go get that.
Well, this works for everybody. And this has been my mantra since I started my own business, because I learned a lot from working for the bad ad agencies. But I say, first of all, build your sphere of influence. Build it every day. And every friend you make, keep that friend and add them and add them and add them and keep that address and use it. And next, communicate. Communicate to those people all the time. Don't be shy. If you have something to share, send it, because you are then alive to those people. Then this I learned from the old mayor of Winter Springs, John Bush, who was the registrar at UCF. Show up. Sitting at the table. All you have to do is sit. We don't even have to talk. Show up, and you are part of the equation. And then fulfill your commitments. Do you know how many men don't fulfill their commitments? Sure, I mean, go inside. If you're so sure you're going to do it, I lay awake at night trying to figure out how to get everything done that I promised people I would do. And then they know you are good for your word. And you are only as good as your word. And the last thing, and this is women, think before you speak. Because on the boards I sit on every single one of them, and particularly, no offense, the Orange County boards that are appointed by the commission, there's always one woman, when she punches her button to talk, everybody in the audience rolls their eyes. Because they know whatever she's going to say is going to be long and complicated, and it's not going to make any sense. She tells them to talk. You don't have to all talk. That's my answer.
So she's lavalier, otherwise we'd be dropping a mic. Don't feel compelled to talk. Alice, do you have anything to add to that? Do you feel compelled to talk, Alice? I'm going to talk.
Well, I think one of the things, the various groups that I have worked in, and one of the things that I always thought was important is all of your connections that you make. Nothing made me more annoyed than to see someone just sign up for a committee or for whatever, and just to get their name on the list. And I was always a fanatic about it with any committees or any events or anything that I did, was that if your name was on my committee list, by George, you were going to work. If you weren't, then it was goodbye time. And I would be very nice about it. And I would say, this is what I need you to do. And if they said, I'll do it. And I would say, if for some reason something comes up in your life, in your business or whatever, and you can't do it, all you need to do is call me. Don't run from me, because then you'll be sorry. And they were. And I think something else that was always important to me was that people that I worked with, I always felt like it was a team. It wasn't me. And I didn't take credit for, it was a successful event. It was because of me. It was my team of people. And I also was this was a major pet peeve of mine, when And then I started out young, but at the same time, as the years progressed, the girls coming in, the ladies coming in were older or younger. And I always treated each one of them with respect, regardless of what kind of background they had or experience they had. And I thought building them up is the most important thing for me, not to build me up, but to build them up. So I always treated anybody who came on a committee with respect, especially if it was a new staff member or whatever, to let them get a lay of the land and work with them to know what they were doing. What would I get out of if I made them feel uncomfortable?
So I'm going to own that I got a little choked up about that because I'm one of those people. I didn't come into the volunteer universe. I'm a first generation college graduate. My grandparents immigrated to this country. My mother had a fifth grade education. We did not volunteer in the community. We couldn't. We went, if we were in the community, we were working. My mom was adamant about, and we didn't give money to charity because she didn't trust any of them. We gave money to neighbors. We fed anybody that walked in. They were extremely charitable people, but we didn't do any of this organized stuff that I'm now part of. So when I walked in to the first meetings, I was a complete jackass. I mean, there's not a New Jersey knucklehead, Italian knucklehead. And Alice, I can still remember there were times when you would pull me aside and say, "You can think it, but you probably shouldn't have said it." And then as it developed, I can remember Ben telling me, "You should have said it, but you shouldn't have said it that way." And so that's the inspiration that I would leave with you today is that one line. I can still remember the meetings I was in when they both said things to me, probably what color shoes I had on because I was looking down at my feet. But imagine the impact that you can have on the next person just by doing that and being open-minded and accepting somebody. You never know where they may go, even if they are a knucklehead. So give me some examples of people that you've mentored over the years.
Well, that question alone bothers me because I don't feel like it's my place to say that I mentored them, because most of the people that I've worked with are individuals who already were pretty sharp when I met them, and I saw something in them that made me want to work with them. And I've got almost a table load of them sitting over there. And I don't know where Missy, we were Becca, Jay, Denji, Katie. Who else is in? Missy and Denise. And then over here, my base camp gang of Terry and Rachel. But certainly, I have an event meeting right after this, because that's another thing I always did is I always piggyback things. So if you've got something happening and I've got an event coming up, and so my little committee is meeting after this. So some of them are here for that. And I've known some of them over 20 years. And when Missy Mercado first came in, she was this young girl right out of UCF. I think you worked for a nonprofit. Oh, yeah, one of the groups. And she's very young. And, I've been through her whole life. Like I've been through all of their lives with children, marriages, whatever. So anytime there's something coming up, I always come back to them and say, "Can you help me with this?" And I don't know if they're afraid to turn me down.
Yes, let's just admit that we're all afraid to turn either of you two down. And there's a couple other names in this town. That's how I'm sitting in this seat right now. But I'll also share that Alice has a new committee member that's joining her today. It's the first committee he's ever worked on, and his name is Jonathan Herr.
So good luck right now. And guess why he did it? What did I say earlier? Because someone asked me, I said to Andria, "Would you mind if I asked Jonathan onto this?" She said, "Yes, please." Yeah, of course, I've worked with him.
Thank you, and tell me what you need, and I'll make him do it.
He's been through the Herr boot camp for events at their house, so I knew he was very keen.
So what's next for both of you?
Well, I have been appointed to the Orange County Charter Review Commission, which is the commission that overviews how Orange County government runs, and it lasts through next November of 2024, and it just started. So, and it's a one main meeting and 3 smaller meetings a month. I did not know that when I got appointed an executive. They don't tell you that. However, it's very fun and very interesting. So that's going to be my main purpose. But I'm very, very busy in my not-for-profit organizations that I belong to, and also in the Foliage Sertoma Club and the South Seminole Sertoma Club that are primarily about children. And in South Seminole, we work with the sheriff, and we do wonderful programs. All in Seminole County. I've been in that for 30 years. Helped me build my business by being in that club. So that's what I do.
And that's with Fred Streetman, right? So you may not be in that club anymore.
I need to get a call.
After I make a call to Fred Sneak.
These are fundraisers.
And we can't say no to him either. Alice, what's next for you? I think I know what it is.
Well, I think you do. Well, actually, with the election year coming up, I'm certainly going to spend a lot of time supporting candidates that I know are good people for us.
Thank you.
So we definitely need some good candidates.
There's at least 2 in this room.
Yeah, there's a few. And that would be a main one, and that one would be a few others. But at the same time, I've just recently, my husband was on the board of Base Camp for many years, and I'm now on the board. I lost him this year. And we have a gala coming up in November. It's our 2nd annual one. So we're working real hard on that. That's the committee that Jonathan will be working on, and a number of others who are out here who I piggybacked and said, oh, you're going to be there anyway. So
It's a great event, Alice does.
anyway, so that event is coming up. And of course, it supports our children and families, and they mean so much to me.
Do we have any questions from the audience? We have time for 1 or 2.
We are playing more stories.
Oh, there's one.
Tell us a story. Use the moderator. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name.
Andrea.
Andria.
Herr, Herr. Let me with that. But Herr on the bell.
Oh, HER.
So you mentioned being told when not to say something or when you should have said therapy. I've never been told that, I swear. So can one of you tell a story where maybe you said something the wrong way? I something about speaking up. Talk about speaking up in spaces that you knew you said it was hard to do that.
Well, I have a story, but it's not about saying it the wrong way. It's about saying it the right way and getting a lot of opposition. It was early days when I was with this chamber, the 2nd iteration, and we were rebuilding it and creating it new, and we wanted to create an issues committee. And Alice will remember this. The board did not want us to create an issues committee. They were worried if we took a stand on issues, it would lose us members. I mean, it is a chamber of commerce. We're supposed to represent business. And we had to lobby hard, and I had to, sell hard to that board. I wasn't the chair. I was just on the board to get them to allow us to create an issues committee. Later on, Alice took that thing to new heights. I mean, it really became, and again, the insurance for the state of Florida and all kinds of different, we were really strong because we had an issues committee and we had the business community behind us. So as far as telling any individual not to say stuff, usually it would just be men that I would say, oh, shut up.
I think one thing that sometimes you speak up in a meeting, and it's very difficult if it's a business meeting or a committee or whatever, and you don't want to use names or say things that you're not sure of, but you know that a particular person is not right for that group to either hire or bring on to the committee or board. And you've got to very carefully word what you're saying. And a lot of times they don't get it. And they'll go ahead and put that person on. And then maybe about 6 months later, that person will show up for exactly what you said they would. So sometimes you just have to be very tactful about it. And it's hard for some of us to be tactful when you care about the mission of the group.
I've never seen Alice not be tactful.
Yeah, me too. She's very gracious.
I just wanted to make a comment. It's not really a question, but all 3 of you ladies had a huge influence on me.
But our big transition, I was going to go to in a little bit of a different direction. Debbie flipped the script on me. I know two of the people that have been majorly influenced, I wouldn't put myself in that category, by these two, as Rebecca and Debbie, and they've had a major impact on the business community. So I'm going to ask you two to stand up as mentorees of these two ladies. And then I'm going to ask anybody else in this room that feels like they have been mentored by Alice and Bev. And I'm going to put myself in that category. So it's going to be a good clip of the room. I think it's going to be simple, have you lost a life? And then the last people that I'd ask to stand up is anybody in this room that learned something today.
About Fred. Evolves.
Actually, it's only that. Ben owns Fred Street at dinner and martinis. You guys have enjoyed that all over. He's got that other degeneration. All right, we're not I'm going to say thank you, ladies, from the bottom of my heart for everything you've done for me over the years, for this community, and thank you for sharing yourselves today.